Before Rome, before Alexander, before the world had maps, borders, or global trade, there was an empire so vast, so organized, and so advanced that ancient historians simply called it the Empire of Empires. It stretched from the deserts of Libya to the mountains of India, from the icy plains of Central Asia to the shores of the Aegean Sea. And yet, it had no massive navy, no natural borders, no single culture, no unified religion. Still, it ruled the ancient world through something far more powerful: administration, innovation, engineering, tolerance, and intelligence. This is the story of Persia, the world's first true superpower, the civilization that pioneered systems we still use today, and the empire that changed the course of human history, yet is rarely given the credit it deserves. Welcome to the rise, the triumph, the collapse, and the rebirth of the Persian Empire. Cyrus the Great, the man who refused to be small. Around 559 BCE, the world was divided into rival kingdoms: Media, Lydia, Babylon, Egypt, each fighting for local dominance. In the middle of this chaos stood a small Persian tribe led by a king history would remember as Cyrus the Great. But Cyrus was not a conqueror hungry for land. He was a visionary obsessed with unity, with building, not destroying, with bringing order to a fractured world. The first shock: Persia defeats Media. In a moment that stunned ancient observers, Cyrus defeated the far more powerful Median Empire. But instead of killing the enemy king, he welcomed the Medes into his administration. This became Persia's first secret: absorb strength, don't waste it. Next came Croesus, the king of Lydia, a ruler so wealthy his name became a synonym for gold. Croesus sought advice from the Oracle of Delphi. She told him, "If you attack Persia, a great empire will fall." Believing it meant Persia, he attacked. But the oracle was right in a way he never expected, because it was his own empire that collapsed. Cyrus captured Sardis, the Lydian capital, and once again offered mercy, not vengeance. The world watched in disbelief. Persia kept growing but left no trail of ash behind. In 539 BCE, Cyrus marched toward the richest and most advanced city on earth, Babylon. It was considered unconquerable. Walls so thick that two chariots could race on them side by side. A river moat. An army trained specifically for siege defense. But Cyrus found their weakness: arrogance. Babylon's king had angered priests, nobles, soldiers, even his own people. The empire was rich, but rotting from the inside. Cyrus diverted the Euphrates River, draining the water beneath Babylon's walls. His soldiers then entered the city at night through the riverbed, walking in silence while the population slept. It became one of the most brilliant strategic moves in history. When Cyrus entered Babylon, he did something no conqueror had ever done. He freed captive populations, including the Jewish people who had been exiled there. He restored temples. He respected religions. He declared that no people should be oppressed for their culture. His decree, carved into what we now call the Cyrus Cylinder, is considered by some to be the earliest human rights charter in the world. Persia was no longer just a kingdom. It had become the world's first multicultural empire, held together not by fear, but by respect. When Cyrus died, the throne passed to his son, Cambyses II. If Cyrus was the architect of unity, Cambyses was the architect of ambition. Cambyses conquered Egypt, defeating the last pharaohs and bringing the Nile Valley into the Persian world. But his rule was unstable, marked by revolts, paranoia, and tragedy. On his return from Egypt, Cambyses died under mysterious circumstances. Some say accident, others whisper conspiracy. But Persia could not collapse. The world was too large, the empire too important. What came next would define Persia forever. In 522 BCE, a brilliant nobleman seized power, Darius the Great. If Cyrus created Persia, Darius organized it. This is the moment when the empire becomes something astonishing. Darius built a highway that stretched across the empire. Couriers could travel it in days, a journey that took ordinary travelers months. Herodotus wrote, Nothing mortal travels faster than the Persian couriers. This was the world's first high-speed communication network, centuries before Rome built its roads. Darius divided the empire into provinces called Satrapies, each one ruled by a governor, a treasurer, and a military commander. It was a system so efficient that modern governments still use its structure. Darius created a gold coin, the daric. For the first time, 3 continents could trade with a single economic system. Under Darius, Persia controlled 44% of the world's population, 5.5 million square kilometers, and more languages than any empire before it. This was not just a kingdom. It was a machine, a blueprint for every future global empire. With Darius gone, the throne passed to Xerxes, a king whose name would echo across history, myth, and legend, and eventually Hollywood. But before the world remembered the Spartans at Thermopylae, this story had begun much earlier. To Persia, Greece was a small and fragmented collection of city-states, not a true threat but a persistent nuisance. Athens had supported rebellions inside Persian territory. Darius had tried to punish them but died before he could finish the task. Xerxes decided to complete the mission. Herodotus claimed Xerxes marched with more than 1 million men. Modern historians estimate far fewer, but still an army of staggering size. The Persian invasion moved like a city in motion. Infantry, cavalry, engineers, pontoon bridge builders, supply caravans, and fleets supporting the march along the coast. To bring his army into Europe, Xerxes built a bridge of ships across the Hellespont, a masterpiece of ancient engineering. In 480 BCE, a small Greek alliance held the narrow pass at Thermopylae. The Spartans became legendary. But what truly shocked Xerxes was that the Greeks chose to fight to the death instead of surrendering like other nations. This was resistance built on ideology, freedom over empire. The pass eventually fell, but the delay gave the Greeks time to regroup. Xerxes also underestimated the Athenian fleet. In the narrow straits of Salamis, the Persian navy was trapped and defeated. That battle changed the war and reshaped world history. Persia would go on to win many battles, but it failed to conquer Greece. The empire remained enormous and powerful, yet Greece had become a problem that Persia would never fully solve. For a century after Xerxes, Persia remained powerful. But inside the palace walls, intrigue, assassinations, and corruption began to erode the empire from within. By 336 BCE, when Alexander of Macedon became king, Persia was still the greatest power on earth, but no longer the power it once had been. To understand Alexander, you must first understand his father. King Philip II dreamed of conquering Persia to avenge the humiliation Greece had suffered generations before. Alexander inherited not only the throne but the mission. When Alexander crossed into Persian territory, the satraps expected an easy victory. Instead, Alexander shattered their forces at the Battle of Granicus. Persia had just realized this was not a typical invasion. The next encounter changed everything. At Issus, Alexander faced Darius III himself. Despite vastly outnumbering the Macedonians, Darius panicked and fled the battlefield, leaving behind his chariot and his family. The psychological blow was devastating. Alexander then marched south, taking Phoenicia, Tyre, after a legendary siege, Gaza, and Egypt. There, he crowned himself pharaoh and founded a new city, Alexandria. In 331 BCE, Alexander met Darius one final time on the plains of Gaugamela. Darius commanded a massive army, war chariots, elite cavalry. But Alexander's tactics were superior. When the Macedonian phalanx opened a gap, allowing a cavalry strike straight toward Darius, the king fled once more. Persian morale collapsed. Alexander entered Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis. Parts of the city were burned, a symbolic act of revenge for Greece. Darius III was later assassinated by his own men. The world's first true superpower was gone, but Persia was not. Its people survived, its culture endured, its identity remained. And soon, a new empire would rise from the ashes. After Alexander died in 323 BCE, His empire fractured among his generals. For nearly a century, Persia remained under foreign rule. But in the east, revolution was quietly brewing. Around 247 BCE, a tribal group from northeastern Iran, the Parni, rose under a leader named Cyrus the Great and declared independence. This marked the birth of the Parthian Empire, also known as the Arsacid Empire. The Parthians were master horsemen. Their warriors could fire arrows while retreating, a tactic known as the Parthian shot. Their empire blended Persian traditions, Hellenistic influence, and nomadic cavalry warfare. The Parthians soon faced a new enemy, one even more ambitious than Alexander: Rome. In 53 BCE, the Roman general Crassus marched into Parthian territory with 35,000 men. He expected an easy victory. Instead, the Parthians annihilated his army using mobile horse archers and heavily armored cavalry known as cataphracts. Crassus was killed. Roman pride was shattered. Parthia had defeated the greatest military machine of its age. For centuries, Rome attempted to conquer Persia. They succeeded only in brief occupations. The Euphrates River became one of the most contested borders in history. No empire, Roman or Persian, could permanently dominate the other. This rivalry defined the ancient world just as the Cold War defined the modern one. By the 3rd century CE, Parthia was weakening. Internal struggles, powerful nobles, weak kings. Out of this chaos emerged a Persian general named Ardashir I. He defeated the last Parthian king and founded a new dynasty. This empire would soon become Rome's most dangerous enemy. When Ardashir I overthrew the Parthians in 224 CE, he did not simply create a new dynasty. He resurrected the ancient spirit of the Achaemenids. The Sassanid Empire became more centralized, more militarized, more culturally Persian, and far more ambitious. Its capital, Ctesiphon, grew into one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. Under the Sassanids, Persia entered a new phase of imperial identity, military power, and global influence. If the Parthians fought Rome as equals, the Sassanids challenged Rome as rivals for world domination. For 400 years, the two superpowers collided. No one could win decisively. The map shifted like a heartbeat. Rome takes Armenia, Persia retakes Armenia. Rome pushes east, Persia pushes west. Every generation fought a new war. Under Shapur the Wern, Persia reached one of its great peaks. In 260 CE, he defeated the Roman Emperor Valerian in battle. Not just his army, the emperor himself. Valerian became a prisoner of Persia, a humiliation Rome would never forget. This single moment cemented Persia as Rome's equal, not its inferior. In the 6th century, Persia found its greatest Sassanid ruler, Khosrow I, known as Anushirvan, the immortal soul. He reformed taxation, military organization, administration, and infrastructure. He rebuilt cities, supported philosophy, and sponsored one of the greatest libraries in history. Under his rule, the empire was stable, wealthy, and respected. Khosrow II later launched a massive war against the Byzantine Empire. At first, Persia won everything: Syria, Jerusalem, Egypt, and Anatolia. The Sassanids now ruled more territory than any Persian empire since Darius the Great. Some historians argue that if Khosrow II had stopped there, Persia might have become the world's dominant culture and religion. But ambition and overextension proved fatal. The Byzantines counterattacked, pushing Persia back. By 628 CE, both empires were exhausted, like two giants who had struck each other until neither could stand. That exhaustion opened the door to a new force rising from Arabia. In the 600s, Arab Muslim armies, unified under a new religious and political identity, began expanding rapidly. At first, Persia underestimated them, but the Arabs fought with high morale, religious unity, extraordinary speed, and tactical innovation. The Sassanid Empire was fractured by internal civil wars. Dozens of kings rose and fell in just a few years. Sassanid forces were defeated decisively, called by Arab historians the victory of victories. After this defeat, Persia collapsed. In 651 CE, the last Sassanid emperor, Yazdegerd III, was killed. The empire officially ended, But Persia itself did not die. Persia vanished as a political empire, but its ideas never disappeared. In fact, Persian innovations shaped every major empire that followed. Satrapies became the model for provinces. Tax systems were adopted by Rome and later by Islamic caliphates. Archives, bureaucracy, and official languages became the foundation of modern states. The royal road inspired Roman roads, which inspired European highways, which ultimately enabled global trade networks. The Persian courier network was so advanced that more than 2,500 years later, the United States Postal Service quoted Herodotus in its official motto, "Neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds." The Cyrus cylinder remains a global symbol of multicultural tolerance and human dignity. Persian thought deeply influenced Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Gnosticism, and Greek philosophy. Concepts like angels, demons, heaven, and hell all carry deep Persian roots. Cavalry warfare, cataphracts, and composite bows were perfected by the Persians. Later, they were adopted by Romans, Byzantines, Mongols, and Ottomans. Despite losing empire after empire, Persian identity survived. Language, poetry, music, art, architecture, art. Iran remains one of the few ancient civilizations that still speaks a form of its original language and preserves cultural continuity across millennia. This is the Persian paradox. Its empires collapsed, but its ideas conquered the world. From Cyrus to Darius, from Parthians to Sassanids, from triumph to tragedy, from ashes to rebirth, Persia was never just a kingdom, never just an empire, never merely a rival of Greece or Rome. It was a civilization engine, a blueprint for how to build, organize, and sustain power across continents and centuries. And even today, in the languages we speak, the governments we build, the religions we follow, and the roads we travel, Persia's fingerprints remain. Because